Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another interview here at Empire's Comics Vault. Online, of course, so you can join us live. Hopefully you are, and you can comment if you missed it on the this one, and you can come into the future ones. Tonight, we have a guest who we have not talked to before, Stephanie Cooke, who has her hands in the pots of many things that we're going to talk about. But more importantly, there's an active Kickstarter you're going to learn about. And there's a new book coming up in July that you should be watching. So thank you very much for joining us, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yes, no, this is great. I love talking to people who I haven't talked to before, and talking to people who have new projects out, not just things that we're seeing for the umpteenth time. But again, you have your hands in a ton of things, which we will get to and show everybody what they are and where to find them. But let's just find out a little bit about you first. When was your first introduction to comics, and what led you to want to do something like this?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been reading comics for a long time, although I kind of just started the way a lot of people did with Archie comics and things like that. And gradually, as in like high school, I got into like manga. And in college, I had been as a kid, I'd been a big fan of like X-Men, the animated series, and Batman, the animated series, and was just super in love with that art style and the stories. And in college, I made my way to X-Men comics and, Batman and things that I'd seen growing up. And from there, it kind of just like spiraled. I didn't really know a lot of people growing up that were into comics aside from my friends that were into manga. But eventually, as I kind of moved to Toronto from where I had grown up, I started to meet new people and get introduced to people who were just like, oh, let's talk about comics. Let me lend you this, try this. And, I just realized I was like, oh, I found my people. Like, these are my people. And it just spiraled from there. I was a big reader. I did like comic book podcasting for a long time. And then after years of doing that, I was actually a news editor for an entertainment website, and I was writing, like news editing kind of stuff and reviews and columns, etc. And somebody was just like, why don't you write creatively? Like, why don't you write comics? Why don't you write stories? And I'd always wanted to be a writer, but you're always just taught like, there's no money to be made there. You can't make it. Too many people want to do that. And then I realized I was like working as a writer just in a different way. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Why don't I just go for the thing that my soul needs? And I started working on anthologies and telling short stories, and it just spiraled. I was just like, I can't not do this. Like, it just, it scratched that itch I didn't know I needed scratching, and I haven't quit since.
So you clearly went to school for writing.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No. I've always been really, really passionate about English and reading and the written word in general. And I've been devouring books and stuff forever. But I actually went to school for advertising and graphic design, which is not even remotely what I wound up doing. So
you went to school for those and then ended up editing.
Yes. Yeah. It's been a journey. So it's, I did so many weird, odd job stuff over the years. I worked in retail forever. I know you all are heroes, and, selling stuff is not an easy job. You're on your feet all day, and I have all the respect in the world for customer service people.
Well, thank you, but it makes it really easy when I love what I sell. That's so much different. It makes a world of difference.
It's so much fun.
It is because I have to read these things so that I know what I'm putting in somebody's hand. So that is, yeah, no complaints from me, but I appreciate the applause. So okay, so you ended up in editing. You were already writing, and then you decided to put your feet in the water. And where did you find these anthologies? Because you've actually been in a couple, as well as you were in Millar. What was it, Millarworld?
Yeah. So we'll come to the Kickstarter I'm currently working on right now, but the team that's publishing it is a little small press publisher called TO Comics, Toronto Comics. And here in Toronto, they're really well known because they run a monthly anthology an annual anthology called Toronto Comics Anthology. And on the screen there, you can see the first story I wrote in an anthology called Young at Heart, which is a Toronto pun for anyone. We have Young Street. And that was actually like a really different story than anything I've really written before or after or since, I guess. It's about my grandmother and how she came to live in Toronto and how she came to be in Canada and how she met my grandfather. And yeah, that was the first time I wrote a published script. I'd written like some other stuff that I just was kind of tinkering around with and kind of trying to fine tune my voice with. But that was the first one that I refined, hopefully for publication. And then it did wind up getting selected. And I worked with the amazing artist, Sean Daly, to bring that to life. And yeah, I did a story in the Blocked anthology there, which was about my single life and, trying to date in Toronto and about somebody who broke up with me over a blanket fort. So that one's called Behind Enemy Linens.
Nice. That over a blanket fort. Okay.
Yeah. It was quite, it's a story.
Okay. And, we have to find the issue so we can read it.
Yeah. And Toronto artist Katie Sawatsky did that. And it was just so much fun I tell these stories to like my friends and on Twitter and stuff. And it was fun. It was a fun exercise to do something that was like autobiographical and just put it to paper and like therapeutic. So yeah, I started kind of just with these short stories because they're such an amazing portfolio piece. I don't think people really understand how great a short story is. People want to write like long form things and they want to jump into, telling big epic stories. And they forget that playing around with like genres and different voices and different styles early on in your career helps to showcase to editors what it is you can do. And then also it just allows you to grow quickly as a creator and see what you like and don't like, what things work for you, what things don't work for you, and to really fine tune your scripts for your collaborators and add things in that'll make you, somebody that your artist will like working with and,
Yeah, and you've worked with a bunch of artists, so that must be it must be working for you at this point. You went with the anthologies. You were in a number of them, as we saw.
Yeah.
And how did you take that next leap to getting a graphic novel out? Because your first one was Oh My Gods. And why don't you tell them a little bit about that first?
Yeah.
And before we go on, Tim, I'll get to that in just a second. I apologize. But Tim has a question, but let's do this first.
Yeah, sure. So I guess Oh My God's here. I'll hold it up. Look, I came prepared. Whoa. Oh, wait, you have like a screen. Back and forth. But yeah, sorry. So Oh My Gods is a middle grade graphic novel. It came out January this year. I co-wrote it with Insha Fitzpatrick and arts by Juliana Moon. It's about a young girl from New Jersey. And basically her mom gets her dream job. And so Karen, the young girl, her parents decide that she'll go live with her father in Greece. And she gets moved to the town of Mount Olympus. And Karen doesn't like put two and two together that it's the Mount Olympus. Like she's thinking, it's just like, it's an homage. It's, named after the Mount Olympus. And she quickly learns that that's not the case. This is actually Mount Olympus. And her new school is filled with gods and goddesses and mythological creatures. So she has to adjust to this really quickly. And she finds herself in the middle of kind of a big hubbubaloo when all of a sudden kids start getting turned to stone. And because she's a new girl, suspicion falls on her. So she recruits her new friends to basically clear her name and figure out who really is turning people to stone.
Nice. So middle grade mystery / fantasy.
Yeah. I'd say it's like kind of like Scooby-Doo, Lumberjanes, and then this is going to maybe be an obscure thing for some people, but like a big source of inspiration for me was like Clone High.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, it was this TV show, and basically all of these, it was like a science experiment, and it's Phil Lord, like the Spider-Verse guys and the Lego Movie guys, one of their first projects together was this. And basically they have these cloned figures from history that go to high school together. So they have like Gandhi and Cleopatra, who's the mean girl, and Abraham Lincoln and Joan of Arc, and they all kind of just try to survive high school together. And I just loved that show, and it was extremely short-lived, and yeah, it's something that's stuck with me for years.
And you were able to take your own spin on high school with a little inspiration there.
Yeah.
Yes, and you didn't stop at number one. Oh My Gods 2 is coming out, so they must have been happy with it, because here we go with another one coming out in 2022, I believe.
Yeah, April. And it's called The Forgotten Maze. And you can see here on the cover, there's some hints at what might be going on. A maze, maybe a minotaur. And basically the kids have to go down to a maze that is hidden in the basement of the school. And they have to find the mysterious figure at the center of it.
Okay, now was it the same creative team on the second volume?
Mm-hmm, yeah. We were a package deal. We love each other.
Right.
We've been working on this for so long, and we have so many ideas. So, like hopefully we'll be working on these for a while longer and bringing more stories to life over the years.
And that is one that everybody out there, I always like to remind you, whether you're in Sacramento or not in Sacramento, that is one that you want to talk to your retailer about now. Let them know it's something that you're interested in. Make sure that they get you a copy, because if they see that you're interested in it, they're going to think other people are too and order a few more. So it's never too early to hit your retailer up. Don't ever think it is. And now it's not too late for this next one, but we've all already ordered this one, which doesn't mean they can't get you a reorder or get one in stock for you. But the book that you have coming out very, very soon in July is called ParaNorthern. And this is what brought you to our attention and made us want to talk to you about it. So tell us a little bit about this one.
Okay. ParaNorthern is, I mean, you can't pick favorites amongst your children, your book children, but ParaNorthern has like such a special place in my heart. It was actually the very first project I ever sold in long form, despite the fact that Oh My Gods came out significantly earlier than this. ParaNorthern was the first of my book children to come to life, and it's ParaNorthern and the Chaos Bunny, a Hopcalypse. Can you tell I like a pun and a play on words?
Is there a lot of that spread throughout the books?
There is. There really is.
Good.
I have a fabulous editor that's just like, do you think that we could like add more puns here? Do you think like we could like push it a bit further? And I love her. So ParaNorthern, as you can see, the beautiful cover here by Mari Costa. It's about a witch named Abby and her three friends, a wolf girl, a pumpkin head, and a ghost. But ghosts aren't dead. They are just beings from other dimensions. And as they come to new dimensions to live, certain dimensions have different effects on their body. And Hannah, the ghost, she loses her corporeal form. So she has like a charm that tethers her to the world and allows her to interact with it. So yeah, basically Abby accidentally opens up this portal to another dimension. And this dimension happens to be filled with chaos bunnies. And they're a bit like, if you've seen Lilo and Stitch, Stitch is very mischievous. He's not inherently evil necessarily, but he's, mischievous. So these bunnies aren't necessarily trying to like kill anybody. They're out there just causing mischief. They're eating everything. They're causing power outages. They're chomping down trees, all kinds of stuff. So their whole little town is getting taken over by this Ahopcalypse. And Abby and her friends, because they opened the portal, feel responsible and need to figure out a way to close this and get all of the bunnies back from whence they came.
Okay. So, and This is just a graphic novel. Do you have any plans to do another one with this?
Oh, again, crossing my fingers.
Okay, all right.
Really
One step at a time.
so.
One step at a time.
I would love to, is the bottom line there, though. Like, I love these characters so much.
I love the idea of chaos bunnies because it's a creature that you wouldn't even imagine as anything other than just absolutely adorable and huggable.
Right.
And yeah, and then here they are just absolutely destroying the town. So, and when did you start on this one? Because it's just hitting here in July, and I'm always interested behind the scenes.
Yeah.
When did this actually get written?
Yeah. So, I mean, ParaNorthern is a story that's been in my head for a really long time. And back in the day, y'all might be familiar with like Jen St. Ange, who's a wonderful artist. If you aren't familiar, you should go check her out. But, you know, she's been on things like Misfits and Gem and the Holograms and all kinds of stuff at this point. But when we were both comics babies who hadn't really written anything or drawn anything professionally, we both got connected through a mutual who was like, you should work together. And that was so long ago. That was like in maybe 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And I approached her and was like, what sort of story would you like? And she was like, witches. I want supernatural, like spooky stuff. And so ParaNorthern was born from that. I was like, what could I write for Jen that she would be really into and would be really fun? And yeah, it started forming at that point. And Jen started taking off and people were just like giving her more work. And unfortunately, it just like wasn't in the cards for us to do the story together anymore. But Jen gave me her blessing to continue pitching it and to find a new artist for it and to get it into the world. And I just kept at it. And the story's really changed since that initial kind of concept, but it came from this place of finding an artist that I really wanted to work with and connect with and building a story together with her. And I just couldn't get it out of my head though. And I needed to, you know, keep at it. And now it's almost here.
And here it is. It's almost there. And now, I mean, what's amazing to me is you do everything from podcasts to the anthologies to full-on graphic novels. And you were doing all of this stuff while you were working. You actually took the leap last year of quitting your job and becoming a full-time writer and / editor. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's actually only been like 3 months, like 2 or 3 months now. So like it wasn't quite last year. It feels like forever. But my last day was in April and the beginning of April. And it was just, I've had a day job and I had resigned myself to having to have a day job for a while still, you know, like I don't want to crush anyone's dreams, but comics and publishing in general don't tend to pay extremely well. You really need kind of a lot of books coming in and you need royalties. You need a passive income to really kind of be able to make it just on a book salary. You know, there's a lot of people who obviously do make a living out of it, but I'm still, you know, my first long form book just came out in January. But the breaking point for me was kind of, you know, I was going to do these day jobs until they started taking up more mental energy and then what I could give, right? I needed to be able to have the spare time and the spare brain function to be able to work on stuff and to be able to create stuff. And my day job was infringing on that and was kind of just taking up so much of my brain power that I didn't have the energy to work on stuff anymore. And I had to make a choice. It was like, do you want to work at this job that's not really going anywhere for like another few years and slowly kind of have like your energy and soul sucked out of you? Or do you want to really make a go at, you know, writing and editing and taking on more projects? Because you know, you'll be able to take on more editing work. You'll be able to write more. You'll be able to do those things. And hopefully, you know, it'll compensate for that lost daily income or monthly, weekly, you know, regular income. So I made that choice to take the leap And
That's awesome.
It's been really fantastic so far. It's still very nerve-wracking. It's just like, oh God, when am I going to get paid next? Which is always terrifying. But I mean, I have wonderful friends that are supportive and just being like, you're going to get through this. Don't worry. It's fine. And, you know, the editing work has been steady and so is the writing. So
see, that's great. What I really love about all of that was the way you phrased it. My day job was infringing on my creativity. You were like, get rid of it. And there's the thing about the graphic novels too. I know they take a lot of effort and a lot of your time, and you don't see anything until they hit. But once they hit, hopefully it's just a snowball effect, and then you move on to the next project. And you also do the editing, which is great on your website. If Ronnie, if you can throw the website up there, you have a whole section on there about your editing process and what you can do for people as well. Taking on clients. And I imagine it's any medium.
I mostly, like obviously I'm primarily a comics editor. And I typically kind of work, I kind of work based on, I guess it sort of depends on the project, I guess. 'Cause like there's certain things that I'm just not always going to be a good fit for. You know, like I really like sci-fi, I really like fantasy. I obviously really like middle grade and YA stuff. And then it gets like a little bit harder with like super high concept stuff because I'm more of a linear kind of thinker. And, you know, I'm just like, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? Like I want to ask questions that kind of poke holes in that higher concept kind of thing. But like anything, it's just a matter of what's a good fit, right? Do me and the creator get on? Like, is the creator going to be able to take feedback in a constructive way and be able to use it to better whatever they're kind of working on, right? So it's kind of a mutual interview process when we're thinking about working together, right? Like they want to ask me what I'm about. I want to ask what they're about, how they're going to take any constructive feedback I have. And yeah, it's just kind of making sure everything gels and works. So right now I'm in like ParaNorthern promotion mode, and then also life, my Kickstarter project is currently up. So I've had to turn down a couple of things lately, but in theory, depending on people's timelines and what, you know, when they're looking to get started on things, I'm always open to being approached about editing projects and discuss if I would be a good fit.
Nice. And you guys can find all of that on her website. Tim did have a question, which is in line with this editing that you might have some insight on. He says, as a novice writer who just finished his first graphic novel, he's trying to create a more complex storyline for the sequel, and he's having a hard time juggling all of the plot points. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how to do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is just not a suggestion per se, but I write my scripts on my computer, but like I love physically writing out, just brainstorming in a notepad, basically every idea I possibly can have, and just getting it all on paper and kind of just, you know, creating that brainstorm where there's just ideas everywhere, and then picking and choosing what I feel is going to ultimately work for the story I want to tell. When I'm doing a storyline, you know, like I outline really heavily before I ever even start scripting. And I basically kind of get a point form outline going where I list all the things that I know I want to happen, and generally in the order I want them to happen. And then as I'm doing that, I kind of am like filling in more stuff along the way. It's like, oh, well, you need something to go from this to this. So what can go in here? And, you know, kind of working it out. And I ask myself questions along the way. I get stuck all the time too, but, you know, like kind of just being able to interrogate yourself a little bit and interview yourself is really helpful. You know, like, I'm like, how is this story going to be satisfying to the reader? What's the arc of the main character? Like, should they have, you know, a power? Should they be tied into this protagonist somehow? Should they, you know, like there's a lot of, or antagonists, like there's a lot of things. If you're not kind of like, if you're feeling like something's missing, write it down in a question, you know, kind of like ask yourself ask yourself things that you can answer. And oftentimes, my editor for Oh My Gods and ParaNorthern, etc., will do that for me. Like they'll kind of not just give me notes, but they'll ask me things more about the world and the characters. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Oh, I hadn't thought about that portion of the world, or how that magic works, or, how this would work. So kind of just filling out your outline, getting to know your characters better, and then leaving room in that outline for your characters to grow as you get to know them more can really ultimately help to simplify that story a bit and make it flow better.
And one of the things I'm hearing here too is that it is extremely useful to have an editor, because it's a sounding board. It's somebody who is a professional, who knows what they're doing and will be able to give you feedback back that isn't necessarily a friend who just says, oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think that's like a hard thing that some creators have to reconcile with. Like, with ParaNorthern, like I had a lot of like things that were in there because they made me laugh. And I was like, oh, this is funny. And my editor was like, that doesn't make sense though. Like, okay, for instance, I have an example of this actually. So I don't know, have you seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Oh, yeah.
So like, that's like my level of humor. And like, I didn't have a lot of like pop culture things growing up. My parents hit our TV a lot of the time. But like when we did have a TV out, Monty Python was like a thing that my dad was like, I need to show my daughter this thing. And, the Holy Grail and the Killer Bunny were such a huge part of wanting to use an innocuous rabbit, a bunny. And I originally had a young character named Tim in the story too, Tim the Enchanter. And he was kind of this character that was a catalyst, I guess. He made a lot of things happen. But Abby has a little sister, and I'd written in this character and kind of just like inserted him into this story. And my editor was like, Steph, it doesn't make any sense. She has a younger sister. Like, just make the character her sister. And I was just like, but I don't want to get rid of this character. And, like, it's hard to get notes, especially where you have to kind of like completely take out a character or completely rewrite something to better fit the story. But like ultimately it's so good. And like Lily Kessinger from HMH is my editor on both ParaNorthern and Oh My God. And she is so, so good at what she does. And I would trust her with any story, like literally any story. I would be like, here, give me notes and I will do anything you ask of me, because she's so smart. She sees the potential in it. She sees where it needs to go and what you need to do. And you just have to be willing to take those notes and integrate them. An editor's feedback should never be, like the be all and end all. It's a suggestion ultimately. Okay. But if your editor is seeing something that doesn't work, why wouldn't you want to make that work better, right? So I think it's important to have somebody who's objective there to hold you accountable and to make sure that what you're doing ultimately serves the story you want to tell. Why would I want like a mediocre story on the shelves? I want my story to be the best it can possibly be. And an editor is there for exactly that.
Okay. No, that's great. I think you definitely handled that. So that being said, I'd like to find out more, because we mentioned it a couple times and it's still active. I'd like to find out more about the Kickstarter that you have going on, but I want to start at the beginning, because this Kickstarter that is now got 18 days left. It's already been funded. Initially, the idea appeared in the Image comic Tartarus.
Yeah. So Johnny Christmas and Jack T. Cole are the creators of Tartarus, and I was the editor on Tartarus. And Johnny, yeah. And Johnny had asked me if I would like to do backup stories for the series, and I was like, yeah, of course I would. Like, of course. So I just kind of had to be like, what kind of stories can I tell in like the first story is like 6 pages, but the majority of backup stories are like 4 pages, right? So it's like, what stories could I tell, that are standalone, because they didn't want them to tie into Tartarus. That was kind of just, Johnny and Jack's area. And I respected that. It's like, so what could I do that was, on its own, and played around with like ideally alien worlds and stuff, since Tartarus is, a far off galaxy story. I came up with Life, which is basically a series of silent short stories, and each story follows a different creature in this world. And we see kind of a brief glimpse of a bit of what their life is like. It kind of traverses different areas in this alien world and explores what they're about. So it was a really, really fun project to work on, and actually also ties into a thing that I feel very strongly about in terms of like short stories. Silent comics, for people who over narrate or have trouble getting rid of, like the inner monologue of a character, or just in general when they're writing a script, telling a silent comic is such a fun challenge. And I love silent stories. So getting to kind of play around with that and experiment with my voice, just doing more of an art direction and telling a story that way, was such a fun experience. And Megan Huang she accepted this challenge enthusiastically. And, she's a big Pokemon fan. And I think this was like, ooh, it's like grown up Pokemon. Like, cause I'd give her notes. I'd be like, let's make like this caterpillar, snake, bird. And she'd be like, yes. And like, let's do this frog slot. Yes. Like, she just loved getting to combine these different characters or different elements of creatures to make an all new character. So we did these series of short stories for Tartarus. And then, like I said, we've decided now to collect them, since they do kind of string together. Mm-hmm. We wanted to collect that in a complete edition for anybody who might not have gotten a chance to check it out.
Yeah, let's take a peek at this artwork, because Megan is fantastic.
Megan is so good.
Oh my God. I mean, these are the pages, everybody. Like it's wonderful. It's beautiful. So they can find that live on Kickstarter right now.
Yep. It's up until, I believe, like the first week of July or so, but each story kind of strings together very loosely. Like, you kind of get introduced to the next character or the next creature in the end of the first story, because we weren't really sure how many we would get. So, we wanted to make sure that they stood alone. Again, we wanted to make sure if you didn't get more, you enjoyed it. But if there were more, it would make sense. And
it would all come together. Yeah. And everybody out there who is wondering, it's already funded.
Yeah.
So you're getting this book. And if you pledge for it, all that means is we're going to force them to give us more.
Yeah. And like, I'm really shocked. Like, I'm so happy it got funded so quickly. Like, it's doing so well, and I'm beyond relieved. But I wasn't really sure, because the book is a pretty like low price point for like the digital and like, the physical copy. So I was like, oh, how many people? I mean, even if we got like X number of people, we'd still be just making the goal itself. And I don't know, like, I'm just really floored by the reception it's been getting so far.
And you honestly did have a low price point, because correct me if I'm wrong, I think getting a physical copy was only $15.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of on Kickstarter.
Yeah. So we really had, we wanted to keep the price point low. It's like a soft cover, but, everything's going to be collected. And I don't know, like, to me, I really like this type of story. We call it like Planet Earth meets like James Cameron's Avatar kind of thing. But it's like, is this going to resonate with other people, or is it going to be kind of just like a niche thing? But Megan's art just kind of speaks for itself. Like, she's phenomenal. And, I met her at a Comic-Con one year, and she was just handing out these like zine portfolios basically of her work. And I was floored by her. Like, I was just floored. And I knew I needed to work with her someday. We kept in touch. And when this project came up, she does a lot of like superhero stuff and like a lot of costume designs, but I'd seen her play around with like some, you know, Pokemon kind of things and other kind of creature stuff. And I was like, I wonder if this would maybe be something Megan would be into. And I knew she was like a really big fan of Johnny's work. She's like a huge fan of Alien, and Johnny had just worked on the Alien graphic novel. And she was like, yes, like I'm absolutely on board with this. It was just like a match made in heaven. I love Megan. Again, her work is phenomenal. So I'm thrilled.
So there, we have got a ton of stuff to look forward to then. Because, the Kickstarter people can get on board with. Oh my God, this volume 2 is coming out. You got another one called Pillow Talk, but that's a little farther. That's a young adult coming out in like 2023.
Yeah.
And then, of course, ParaNorthern right now. You've got podcasts going on. You've got a very active blog where you even inform us of what to watch.
Yeah, I watch a lot of TV, and I don't know, like at some point in time, you know, people are just, especially during the pandemic, you know, people have been like, oh, what do I watch now? What's good? And so I just started kind of tracking it, and it started as like this way to kind of like make sure I knew what I was watching. But I don't know, that sounds really weird, but it just like felt like an achievement when I was like, oh, I finished this thing. Oh, I finished this thing.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I should just share this with people. So yeah, like I again used to review stuff. I used to write for like movie websites and do reviews. So kind of just like sharing things like this makes me feel connected to people in a different way. Like it's like, you know, we all consume media. We all kind of do something to pass the time, and it's another way to kind of just have a dialogue with people about things that we all enjoy.
Yeah, no, and like I said, it's a very active blog, so you guys should check it out. God, that was really nice talking to you. I'm looking forward to seeing these books hit. But Ronnie, is it possible to put a link up to the Patreon, if at all? Or I'm not sorry, not the Patreon, the Kickstarter. But while he does that, speaking of that, you also have a Patreon that they can join to help out a little bit, and where you talk about your we won't call it an obsession, your passion for your kitty.
Yes, yeah, I do. She's here. I thought she would crash this, to be honest, but she's being very good right now. So you unfortunately don't get a cameo, and I fortunately don't have to worry about my precarious setup crashing down mid discussion.
That is great, and you must love her because you're allergic to cats, and yet you
I am so allergic
through for her.
Yeah. I have a lot of allergy medicine like in my system at all times, but yeah,
you got to do it for the little fur ball. I mean,
yeah,
I completely understand. I would do the same for my pugs.
Exactly. She's great.
So no, that's great. Everybody, again, talk to your retailer. Go into the shop, tell them ParaNorthern is on its way and that you would love to get a copy. Tell them that if they don't have Oh My Gods on the shelf, to order it, get you one and get one for the shelf as well. And of course, there we go. The Kickstarter is up. Go take a peek, watch her video. I think she already explained everything right here, but watch the video, look at the pages. And as we talked about, that price point is amazing. Usually on Kickstarter, people are covering a lot of costs, doing a lot of things, and you don't see it at 15. So that, I mean, when I saw that, I was extremely impressed. And you did the wonderful thing that I personally enjoy. A lot of people forget to put a retailer incentive there. So that, thank you very much for that. So we can get it in the top for everybody. And yeah, keep your eyes out. Follow on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook to find out more of what she's doing. And we only have one more question for you tonight. And it's the most important one of the evening. Which do you prefer, soft serve or traditional ice cream?
Oh, that is hard. But I think traditional is more my bag.
Excellent. All right, good call. You have chosen wisely. We're just taking a poll. A friend of mine, we got into an argument about it years ago, and I just do this to prove her wrong.
You know, all ice cream is good ice cream, but you don't get the flavors and all that. Like that, you get with traditional ice cream. And,
Yes.
you know, like, I don't know, there's something about a good scoop on like a waffle cone that will never, ever, ever beat a soft serve cone. I'm sorry.
You know, and I'm glad we talked about this today because it's 100 degrees here in Sacramento today. So this might be a perfect day to stop by on the way home and grab something.
I literally picked up ice cream like 15 minutes before our discussion. So that is my post-chat treat for myself.
Excellent. Go grab it. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing the book in here and looking forward to seeing the conclusion of the Kickstarter and, of course, the future projects that you have. Everybody, again, follow her. Check out the Patreon, check out the Kickstarter, and of course, visit her website and see everything that she has to offer. And sorry, that's Rolly.
I appreciate it. He's just saying hello too. I love him.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Stephanie. We will see you guys in the shop. And of course, let me know if you need a copy. I would love to hold one for you because we definitely have them coming in. All right, free.